Ladies and gentlemen, this is Johnny here to show you some tips on your, well, not on your, but on more on Lictor's allies play. Now, I'm gonna help you understand allies better. Something really important here, which is what we're gonna start off with. Something I want to show people that I came up with. I'm pretty sure someone else might have already came up with it. I mean, like, that'd be silly to think I came up with it or something. But I found it by myself, to say the least. And I found it by fighting one of my own AIs back in the day. So basically, what I needed to do, I needed a way to counter everything the AI could throw at me. MiGs over the airfield, fast third refinery from Japan, you know, stuff like that. So I figured it out. I figured the perfect MCV position.
Building.
You can defend all of this. And you can defend your entire spot up here.
Cancelled.
You can reach your airfield with Tech 2. Now, this is a very tricky placement. But remember this. This is how I keep in mind. The MCV should be tucked right in between both roads. This applies to both sides of Infinity Isle. So, yes, it's on both. It's in between those roads. And this is one like about well, it looks more like two, but still, there's a little bit of placement here that separates the airfield from the garrison, which you should keep in mind when doing this. Notice it's right at the edge of the borders of the original starting location. So basically, you still got the short distance that you would normally do if you place your MCV around here or whatever. But this is a very crucial position, because it keeps you nice and close to your enemy, and you got the garrison nearby to protect against any MiGs. A couple javelins in there will do. Next is the seaport. Notice how we have room for that. Here. We have room for it right here too. It's such a good spot. On this side of Infinity Isle, I don't think it quite fits here, but you might be able to put it here, somewhere like that. But still, it serves its same purpose. You can have your airfield really close to your enemy, and at the same time still be able to place your naval yard, and you know, you'll have your tech range. It's perfect. It's probably the best position I've ever found on Infinity Isle, because it has so many variables. You know, you don't have to reposition your MCV for the naval yard. You don't have to do anything like that. You won't have to worry about it being out of range unless you misplace something. But even then, we still have plenty of room here, right?
Here.
So if we wanted to move our MCV a little bit closer to the right, and even further our airfield placement, you can do that as well. That's just a good advantage to this position, and making full use of the massive build radius of the allied MCV. So let's get right down to business. We'll load up this match. It has 10 wubs right now. So we'll figure it out. This is it. It's gotta be it. I know it's been a while since I've done any VOD things, but I really stopped. But this replay bothered me. I was like, this is the Lictor that people are complimenting so much. I found a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that cost them the match. So I'm going to point it out. For one thing, this barracks placement's a little bit weird. Now, you normally want to place it here, which is what Yui always places it. Keeps the dog distance low, but it's not that big of a deal. In fact, it's not that big of a deal at all. But, you know, I guess whatever. So, another thing is no dogs around the aisle. That's a mistake. That's a problem. You don't want to just keep giving your opponent reasons to... You don't want to give your opponent the chance to counter your scouting. Now, Kivi has 3 bears. And he's not really using them for anything other than just, you know, what bears are good for. They're good combat units just as much as they're good scouts. But as we can see, Kivi's going for the around the aisle scouting position. So, you know, Lichter has yet to fully scout his opponent, as we will see as we go into his view. He doesn't know what his opponent is up to. He can't. If he did send one around, he would know. He has 6, 7, 8, 9. He built 9 Peacekeepers at the start of the match, which means he spent about 2,000 credits on Peacekeepers. But he's noticing this little army from Kivi, and this army is a great army to counter Peacekeeper swarms. My old Soviet mentor taught me that little trick back in the day. So it looks like Lichter's going for that Tier 2 Cryo start. Now, yet he has no idea what his opponent's up to. This is a completely blind build. He doesn't even know if his opponent has a war factory or not. So he has no idea what he's walking into. And he doesn't have a Vindicator yet. If this were Maniac, he would have had a Vindicator partially built before had that Cryo fully made, which is the most effective way to go for this. So as you see, he didn't scout, and there's 3 bullfrogs. Now here's something for the Soviet players. If you want an effective, versatile bullfrog placement, place it right here. This is the perfect spot. Make sure you put a bear up here on this section of the map, somewhere where it's still kind of out of sight for the Vindicators, but you can still see it coming. That way you can also see the Cryos coming, and thus have the reaction time to get there to stop the Cryocopters. I also suggest you do this as Soviets or allies, just to have a dog or a bear on these sides of the maps. Another mistake that Lichter's going to do is not doing that. So he's going to get harassed tons because of not scouting at all. So this attack here is pretty interesting. It's a little bit of harassment upon the forces of the Kivi. I think I've mentioned that before, but I kind of think that when your opponent's losing forces without really doing any damage back, it's like a harassment still, because your opponent has all this invested money and not able to do any damage. Lichter has some good micro here with this Cryocopter, keeping it out of harm's way. And looks like Kivi's having a bit of trouble with this. Now he's hitting that civilian structure. Goes back in. Here's something that I do that I don't see many Soviet players do. Don't know why. I think it's a smart move. And oh no, the Cryocopter has been lost. But it looks like he's still gonna hit that collector, so it's kind of worth it. Did plenty of damage with that Cryocopter. So we have 2 Cryocopters and a Vindicator. That'll be good to help take out any bullfrogs that might try to repel the attack. Because Kivi didn't have any scouts around here, he did not see this coming ahead of time, which is a problem. As I mentioned, that's something I would do back when I was playing Soviets. I know these things because I play allies a lot, right? I know these Soviet things that they can do that pissed me off as allies, because they would always see things coming. Some players would do it, some players don't do it, but it's a good move. And, oh, he almost, well, you know, he didn't almost lose a Cryocopter because they have like 1 trillion health. They never die. And, I love this freezing. And, good, he got that 1 cryo out of the way, and, oh, a lot of damage being done. He's gonna have to repair that before going in for another attack. He killed another Cryocopter, which is preventing his opponent from reaching a mass of Cryocopters, which is always very complicated. Kivi's going to do something very smart here. When your opponent goes for Cryocopters like this, there's a very good thing you should build, and it's called MiGs. In this position, Kivi really can't do much. We are looking at Kivi, right? Yes. Okay, just making sure. So, you know, some good cryo defense. Looks like it loses the power plant to some orbital drop. Good use of the orbital drop. Something I see a lot of mistakes from Soviet players is that they do not use their protocols enough. And it's like they don't know when to use it. Are they going to use it during their attack to take out a turret, a barracks? I think if you're not going to be able to attack anytime soon, I'd say a very good option is to just hit the power plants. That's a very good thing to do. I'm not entirely sure how Kivi saw those cryos coming. Maybe he just kind of felt it. So Kivi's now starting to get up his army. There's the airfield. MiGs are so good for dealing with cryocopters. A lot of Soviet players I've talked to recently have disagreed with that. But we're going to see in this game that they do serve a purpose, and it's going to stop the opponent from being able to approach. Notice how Kivi keeps the bullfrogs in the back, but still in such a way that they can defend the tanks. That's really, really good micro from Kivi. But oh no, he loses one right in the middle of his opponent's army, so a little bit of miss micro. But uh oh, here comes the MiGs, and that was that's why MiGs are so good against cryocopters, because they can sneak in like that. But these it looks like he couldn't retreat with the MiGs fast enough, and he still has one over here. He's trying his best to micro though, really trying hard. But as long as that MiG's there, it's in danger. But for the most part, yeah, MiGs for the win. His opponent can no longer just walk into his base with cryocopters. And a very amateur reaction to MiGs, a very bad one, is to play into its hands. Something I used to do when I was newer to the game. Something I would do, I would build a second airfield and fill it up with Apollos. But I had my mentor at the time was a Soviet player, and also as a mentor, he wasn't really showing me how to play. He was just beating the crap out of me. But he would build a second Soviet airfield and build 8 MiGs, and then I couldn't stop it. I know that's not necessarily the case, but building 4 Apollos or any Apollos against MiGs is a big mistake. Maybe 1 Apollo might be okay. But other than that, it's pretty much a waste. And his MiGs are in a very bad position. He has his MiGs in such a position where, what the hell are they guarding? They're not protecting anything. He should have had them near this refinery, because that's the vulnerable one. This is the vulnerable refinery. These drops are very effective, very good drops, very deadly. Now, this is what you would want an Apollo for, to prevent drops, because the main way to stop a drop is with Apollos. You gotta intercept the drop vehicle. Another power plant has been destroyed by orbital drop, as he knows he cannot wipe out his opponent in one attack. This is a very valuable thing to know and do on Infinity Isle. I do this as allies, and I do this as every faction, actually, the big wall across the center. It's very helpful, and it's very useful, and it's an intimidation factor, believe it or not. The main advantage of having walls here is just the existence of it. The existence of it is kind of a mental thing to block your opponent. He wants an easy way to take out your forces, and he can't use aggressive stance with these walls around, because these units will just start shooting at walls. If you really want to mess with your opponent, you can just stack up the walls, and you can stack up more on one side, which will make the player want to attack the one with less walls. In a way, you can control how your opponent thinks. A very valuable thing. He has MiGs just standing by here in the middle of his base. He doesn't want the cryos to get too close. But the biggest problem here is that if he does get the cryos close and then retreats, the MiGs might be pulled right into the javelins. I think it's a mistake from Lichter to not have any IFBs, or in fact all he has is 5 javelins. That might not be enough to take down these MiGs. They'll be distracted. Now look at the wall. Look how long his opponent was stalled. And he's got to build up so much more of an army because of it. He has 3 shrunken tanks, which is a big problem. He needs to get those tanks out of the battle. And there was no micro attempt from Lichter to block those bears, to run them over. And as I said, he didn't have any IFBs, he didn't have enough javelins. Look what happened. You gotta be afraid of MiGs a little bit, you know? But this is where things get really, really weird. He built 3 Apollos, and that in itself is a mistake. That's 3,000 credits. That's enough to go tier 3. Now, you're probably wondering, why is that a mistake? Why is that a problem? It's because it plays into your opponent's hand. That's the problem with it. You have spent 3,000 credits in a reaction to what your opponent did. 3 units that can't do anything other than stop MiGs. And MiGs are not attack units. MiGs do not search and destroy. MiGs are repel units. That's the problem. Apollos are hunters. MiGs are defenders. So what MiGs are for are way different than what Apollos are. Apollos go out, they can scout, they can take out any air unit just hovering around. MiGs don't do that. They have so little health and they're so vulnerable that they can't do that. But what MiGs can do is defend very key positions. But it's so easy to stop an Apollo combo. All Kivi needs is a flak turret. He needs one flak turret and plus his MiGs. What the heck can his opponent possibly do? MiGs alone suck. You'll need at least one bullfrog. We'll see that very soon. You'll see these Apollos just tearing apart these MiGs. You need something other than MiGs. You can't rely on only MiGs as Soviets. I'm pretty sure every Soviet player who hears what I just said now is something we can all agree on. MiGs alone are garbage. But they do serve a purpose. They aren't useless units at all. Lichter's having a very tough time figuring out how we can mount a counteroffensive. Here we go with another twin blade drop. Something Lichter should have done is put a dog down here. Just like I said, Kivi should put a bear up here. Same reason, so you can intercept the twin blade. Now, let's talk about that for a while. How do you stop these drops from coming? Well, you'll want one Apollo fighter or two. Here, make sure the civilian structure, I don't know if we can see what's inside. Yeah, it has the Peacekeeper. Make sure the civilian structure has a couple javelins. So that way, if the opponent does have MiGs, you can just retreat to here and he can't do anything about it. So what you'll need is an Apollo. You'll need your dog so you can intercept it with your Apollo. If he has MiGs, then you can keep some javelins in the middle of your base here, or keep them here so you can retreat. But that's not all. We all know that there's ways to react to just about everything. The Soviet player could easily just send a couple of bullfrogs to stop those Apollos. Okay, well, to stop those bullfrogs, then maybe we'll just use a couple javelins down here in general. So that way we'll have the javelins in here, some javelins down here. Well, what if you send some bears with those bullfrogs? Suddenly we're in big trouble. Well, then build some IFVs and put them here. IFVs are probably the most effective way. Like what the twin blade, the MiG, the bullfrog, the bear, they can't do anything about it. He can try terror drone, but if you use my build order, you'll have your airfield not here in this very far away position. You'll have it here, right next to the civilian structure. So that'll make it very easy to repair your IFVs or anything nearby. Imagine if his airfield was right here. He could have repaired these prospects. He could have repaired them, and he wouldn't have had to rebuild them. Just many things like that can really save you and help you out. But just look at these Apollos having so much trouble against these MiGs. But these MiGs alone just aren't enough. And they're not being positioned in any particular way. Nice risky play there to take out that cryo right at the very end. I don't suggest doing that. These are MiGs we're talking about, and they will die from like 6 projectiles from the VX. But this is allies here, so it'll at least take 7. Just one more. Now, Lichter has everything under control in terms of air, but his opponent is now expanding again. In fact, he may have been the aggressor the entire match, but he has certainly not gained entire map control. He hasn't gotten a 4th refinery, which is very hard to do as allies. Actually, no, it isn't as hard as you'd think. Oh, he builds a bullfrog. That's a little bit risky. He should have had those MiGs there so much sooner. He has 4 MiGs. That's so brutal. Look at how they chew through those cryocopters. And, oh, this is a great positioning of the flak trooper. And, oh no, he's not escorting the cryocopter, so he's gonna lose the crowd. But he's running over here to these javelins. But if this was filled with javelins, these MiGs wouldn't have so much trouble. As a Soviet player, if your opponent does have javelins here, you'll want to take some conscripts and just throw some Molotovs at it. You can throw it from the cliff down. Your opponent will have to ungarrison the structure, but you probably should just keep shooting at it anyways. I know, I'm giving tips for both sides. I mean, it was mainly supposed to be allies, but, I'm just going to throw some other stuff out there. This is a very brutal attack. All the Soviet infantry has gone completely down. So Allied infantry has always been beast. They've always been really strong. He's getting desperate, sending his tanks right at his opponent's units. That's something you shouldn't do, especially when there's like 5 or 6 javelins in there. Now he's not doing it while they're all stunned. There we go. Great work. You can never rely on an infantry-based army. They die so fast. They instantly just go. Of course, it speaks to the saying that he should have been paying attention to that terror drone and put it in secondary to freeze that tank and take that out. Lichter should be at tier 3 by now. That's all I'm going to say. He should be heading for that tier 3 position. If there's one thing as an Allies player and as experienced with Soviets and watching Soviets, of course, and I'm pretty sure, you know, from what various Soviet players say, Allied tier 3 is a pain to deal with. It's something very, very difficult. So you'll want to aim for that tier 3 more than just continuing on with that tier 2 play, because the Allied tier 3 is really strong, just as strong as the tier 2. But Lichter's having a lot of trouble holding on to the tier 2, and he's really scared of these MiGs, but you know the one unit he just doesn't build is IFV. And there's a couple players out there who would argue the IFV is the best anti-air unit in the game. In my personal opinion, I think the Bullfrog... I like the Bullfrog. I think they're all really strong anti-air units. The VX Striker, the Bullfrog, and the IFV. They're all good. The IFV is very good and very quick. That's why it's really useful. The VX is very good because it's so strong. It's very it has a lot of health to it, so it's going to be better than the IFV for taking out twin blades. And I think in a brute force battle between air and ground, the VX will win. For usefulness as an anti-air unit, it'll have to go to the IFV. I love the Bullfrog though. Personally, I really like it because it's versatile. Because if you have a bear in the water here, as I mentioned earlier, you can just put your Bullfrogs out in the water ahead of time. I remember playing a match against Destructo and I destroyed so much of his aircraft. I still lost the match. I'm terrible with Soviets sometimes. But also, that player was really abusive of cryocopters. But, you know, you gotta use your faction's advantages. That's, like, one of the key things, right? I mean, what the hell's the point of playing a faction if you're not gonna use the stuff that makes it so powerful? And that's what we're seeing here from Lichter. But here's the biggest mistake in all of the entire game. The entire game, oh my goodness, you killed the MiGs! Congratulations, you did it, Lichter! You killed the MiGs! And now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units that can't do anything at all. Congratulations. That was a good move. And this was a devastating hit. That was a mistake from Kivi to put all these structures so close, knowing that Allies have the good old Cryogeddon protocol. And they don't even need Cryogeddon to freeze a battle lab. All you need is Cryoblast. Keep that in mind. So it looks like he's going for the V4s. Soviets do have a little bit of use with Tier 3. I'd say the most useful part of Soviet Tier 3 is the one thing that Soviets don't use. It's called the Iron Curtain. I've spoken about it multiple times to people. Of course, they probably just laugh and just don't take it seriously. But I'm honestly serious. The Iron Curtain is a very strong unit. It's not unit, but structure, a super weapon. It's very versatile, and it recharges every 3 minutes. And those 3 minutes go up so fast you wouldn't even know. These 4 hammer tanks with an Iron Curtain could easily start doing serious damage to this army. Of course, this army couldn't even attack back. They would have to scatter to keep the forces from being crushed, and he would be forced to lose some tanks. That every 3 minutes, and they wouldn't even need an army to do it. It'd be very simple. You can do so much with Iron Curtain. Iron Curtain prevents this from happening. Your units can't be shrunk. If you really want something cool, you can Iron Curtain the MCV and just crush everything. We know with the Terror Drone. If you Iron Curtain the Terror Drone and MCV, stuff like that. But of course, in general, you're probably going to want to Iron Curtain your tanks. Your Apocalypse tanks will be very strong. Just you can grind any structure you want. Won't be a problem. So anyways, he had all those, look at all these Apollos, and they can't do anything. You know what's even worse is that he built even more of them. Do you think Kivi is gonna rebuild an airfield? I guess so. I was gonna say, why would he want to rebuild an airfield? There's 8 MiGs in the air. You prevented the MiGs, but your opponent can stop playing into your hands after you played into his. He made such an investment into those Apollos, and now we can't use them anymore. Now look at all these bullfrogs. There's so many bullfrogs. There's no way that cryos are going to be able to dominate this army in terms of freezing. It can shrink as much as it wants because the shrink ray is really long range. But it's going to be very tough. So, you know, some good attack went down here. You know, the good old Riptides doing some damage. A fairly close match so far to this point. Lictor probably should have dominated this match. Maybe. You gotta remember, there was a lot of desperate plays from Kivi. Kivi's making a big mistake going with MiGs. There's no point. There really isn't much of a point. Not when your opponent has 8 Apollos, or what is this? Yeah, this is 7 Apollos. Not when your opponent has 7 Apollos. There's no point. There's no point at all. This force is very scattered. A lot of the infantry's not attacking. Now this is always so deadly. Because Crowdgeddon forces you to split up all your forces. Half of it goes to your opponent's forces, half of it gets spread out and all thinned out. So now this attack should be really adding up. He needs to get these forces all into play. Nope, they're all heading forward. They're all heading forward. They're not even attacking useful units. They're attacking a Tesla trooper that can't even be hurt by tanks. That is not only just poor unit AI by EA's part, you know, in StarCraft the unit would automatically know because those units micro themselves. That attack was failed simply because he just let his units do all the work for him. He just like, attack. But his units kept moving. So, you know, it didn't really work out so well. They all kept attacking the Tesla trooper. Looks like Lictor has a little bit of money, or not. He has 2 boot camps, but no money to build from. He has all depleted refineries too, so, or ore nodes, I should say. So that attack was fail and a half. But still. So even though being a victim of bad luck in this match, when he did have an upper hand, this match probably could have went a bit longer if he didn't end up being forced to attack that Tesla trooper. I mean, he wasn't forced. It's just like it's like you can be a good player, but sometimes you just do things and then you're like, wait a minute, what the hell just happened? And then you realize, oh, normally I don't have to worry about my units attacking a Tesla trooper as they drive by. But apparently that's what happened. Remember this, whatever you target with your tanks, so if you misclick attack a Tesla trooper and then start moving your units afterwards, they're going to keep attacking that Tesla trooper. They remember their attack order. So if you order units, something I like to do is I press Alt A, you know, I attack a structure and I can just move my units around that structure and they'll keep attacking it and not focusing on anything else. But this also applies to regular units in general. So if you misclick and fire on a unit, and start moving in a different direction, it's going to keep attacking that one unit unless you order it not to. If you want to really make your units attack what's nearby, press the S key, and then your units will start doing something. They'll automatically start targeting what's nearby. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure if that's what happened with Lictor, but it could have been. So as we can see, the big result of this battle was huge. It could have been so much more if it wasn't for the firing at the Tesla trooper. So in the end, I'd have to say, well, of course it was a good game. It was a great match. But I think there was plenty of mistakes that were played. I think Kivi made a mistake with those MiGs. They didn't really do anything after that. Especially, he couldn't really draw up anymore with the MiGs. Now, the thing about the building MiGs is that when your opponent does something, is building Crowcopters defensively, if he's using Crowcopters defensively, Your MiGs are useless. MiGs are not hunters, as I mentioned before. They are deflectors. They are defenders. Because they cannot wander into your opponent's base and just start attacking, because they have to worry about multi-gunner turrets, javelins. So many things were lost because Lictor could have had those javelins in the garrison. So, you know, there's just key things you can do to really put down a very good defensive, offensive style of play, depending on your positioning. He should have had those IFVs around to take care of those MiGs. He didn't have to keep them participating in the battle. One thing I like to do is put my my anti-air units on a hotkey and put my main army on another, so I keep my anti-air units somewhere in the back. So that's what you'd probably want to do with the IFVs. So in the end, I'd have to say that Lictor probably really should have won that match, especially because he got Cryogeddon. He even got tier 3 in the end. But he probably should have got that tier 3 earlier, and definitely, 100%, absolutely not, never, ever, ever go for second airfield for Apollos. Ever. Never do that. Ever. It's so bad. It's so horribly bad. The airfield cost 1,004, Apollos cost 4,000. That's 5,000 credits gone on anti-air units that can't do anything other than what? Kill those MiGs? To kill the MiGs? What are the MiGs gonna do if you have proper anti-air? MiGs are not something to be afraid of. He had 7 MiGs, 7,000 credits that could have been spent on so much more. IFEs are so much more effective against MiGs than Apollos. Think about it. What are the Apollos for other than escorting those cryos? Well, that doesn't really matter if your opponent has MiGs and frogs. You don't have to worry about the MiGs attacking you if you have IFVs. And IFVs cost less than Apollos. And it's most likely you'll already have a war factory. You want to attack that water refinery? Build a naval yard and build a hydrofoil, because hydrofoils are freaking beast against MiGs, or any air unit in general. They can hardly keep up. Twin Blades can't even use their rockets on them because they move so fast. He'd have to rely on a terror drone. But if he has a terror drone, you can easily just put a dolphin, and that still costs less than the second airfield. One airfield is equivalent to a naval yard in cost. Same power surplus. And you can do a lot with that naval yard. You can expand to a 4th refinery underneath the cliff there. You can build dolphins to attack the refinery. You won't even really need to harass it with cryos and vindicators. And if you really wanted to spice things up, you could attack it while you attack the land refinery. So, as for the Soviet players, if your opponent does go from Apollos, be sure to build a flak turret within your base somewhere. Because flak troopers are really slow. They're very, very slow. Not just movement, but they are very slow at attacking things. And flak turrets, they cost, just the same amount of as a bullfrog, but they have so much more health, and they can take so much more damage and deal it damage even faster. So to have MiGs and a flak turret can help, really help out against, quadcopters, and especially if your opponent reacts to you by building Apollos. Your opponent builds 7 Apollos against you. All you need is 1 flak turret, and those Apollos cannot touch your MiGs anymore. Heck, they can't touch your MiGs even if you have bullfrogs nearby. They can't. There's no way. He'd have to have a couple crocodiles and shrink your bullfrogs. But if you have good micro, you just pull your bullfrogs back and attack the crows with the MiGs. And it's a lot easier to do that than, use crows to hit the bullfrog and the Apollo for the MiGs. It's not to mention it doesn't cost as much for Soviets to do that. Not much at all. So keep that in mind. And I guess that ends this. I know it's been a while since I did a VOD. I mentioned that earlier. I'm not necessarily going to. I did this because I just felt like this is something that Allies players and Soviet players should know. Especially Allies. There's some really key things that can really help your Allied play. So, I guess that's it. Hope you guys learned a couple things. Peace, I guess. See you later. It's been fun.